Hey ho, it's Simple Lines Anatomy. I got that backwards. Yeah, whatever. We're rolling. We're rolling. I can't do this again. It's on tape. It's very expensive. All right. Anyways, this time around, we're going to be talking about pain, where it actually comes from. And, right now, we got to say something with a little controversy. Oh, man, Clark, come on, man. Controversy. I forget it. Anyways, we're going to say something you probably don't want to hear. Maybe something you don't like to hear. But anyways, it'll be good. We're going to be fine. So here's the thing about pain that we feel necessary to say. Pain does not always come from where you think it does, or at least it's not caused by where you think it is. In many ways, it's a poor indicator of the actual problem, and it can't really be completely trusted when your patient tells you about it. And it's not something that should necessarily lead your entire process. And this is what's done a lot in the manual therapy world. The patient tells us where there is pain, and we want to make them feel better, so we tend to rub it. And there's reasons for that. There's reasons why that works to some extent. But we're going to discuss the reasons why that shouldn't necessarily be done, or it shouldn't always be done. You should always listen to your patient, for sure, because they're going to tell you important things. They're going to tell you things that might be potentially dangerous, like a red flag, something that you need to send away to the doctor, something that needs an immediate medical attention. And they may, in fact, not know about it. They may have no indication that this is actually a problem. And so it is very important to listen to your patient, of course. But that being said, it should only be a part of your structural diagnosis, your structural understanding of the patient and where that pain is coming from and what you're going to do about it too. This is a very important thing, and you have to be able to rely on other things. You have to be able to rely on your objective components of your assessment. This is really important because it differentiates what you're going to be able to do for the patient as opposed to just to the patient. Anyone can do a bunch of moves. That's not a big deal. You can find lots of people to do that. But you actually fixing a problem and making sure it stays away, that's hopefully what you want to do. If you want to just see the same people every day for the exact same reason and nothing ever gets better, well, that's okay too. You can do that if you want. But the fact is, if you can make it go away and it stays away, you're probably going to see a lot more people and see a lot more interesting cases. So the pain, key point here. The pain is not always a good indicator of where the problem is. In fact, it's usually a very poor indicator, unless they most recently got hit with a hammer, in which case then you do know where it's coming from. So we got three real simple, easy examples here, and I'm going to start off with the neck being bent to the side. Now, before anyone comes after me with a pitchfork, if the neck was really stuck to the side, it would be in a relative neutral, like the head would be over here. You'd have this thing going on, and the neck would be more. It would be more of a translation. But we're not going to be talking about this. Is a simpler example. Again, just trying to avoid the pitchforks. So, if we look at a head being bent to the side, and there are lots of muscles that go from approximately here and attach into here. And we're just going to say, for argument's sake, this is the scalene muscles, to keep it real simple. There's a few of those. There's some scalene muscles over here. You could do the trapezius too if you wanted, but let's just say scalene muscles. So if you look at this head has been brought over to the side. It's been bent to the left. And so that means we've got a long side and a short side. So hopefully you'll agree with me when I say that the right side, this is the right here, and this is the left. Hopefully you'll agree with me when I say the right side is longer. It's a further distance between the attachment points. And the left side is relatively shorter. So it would be thicker as well. Heavy exaggeration in this image. But anyways, hopefully you get the idea. Now, of the two, if I have to ask a question, which of the two do you think would be strained or potentially in pain? Because those two go together. When you lengthen a muscle, over lengthen a muscle or any tissue, should get a pain response, right? So which of the two? Hopefully you'll agree with me that it would be the right side. Ooh, that's way too big. Let's shrink that down a bit. The right side that would have the lightning bolts coming out of it. Ouch, pain. Especially if you put a big pressure and you pushed a little bit further, to exaggerate it in this course, but a little bit of exaggeration to show that point. The lengthened side is more than likely to be in pain. And in this case, let's say, oh no, you're talking on the phone with your mom. Not that phones look anything like this anymore, and you're having a great time. It's a mom conversation, so it's a long one. But anyways, you're there for a long time. Which muscle is going to be contracting? Of course, it's this one here. It's doing its job. It's this left side muscle. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to. It's being short, but the opposite side, the right side, is long, and that's where we're going to likely see this strain and pain. Now, the patient comes to you and they say, hey, I've got all this pain on the right side of the neck. You got to do something about it. But here's the thing. This right side is now passive. It's not doing anything. There's no irritating, there's no controlling nerve that's telling it to fire necessarily. It may resist to some extent, but the nerve control is coming through here. See, like 3 to 8, just to be clear. I'm not going to draw all those. So the nerve control is actually coming from here. And if the patient is in fact stuck in this position too, say we've got a whole bunch of fibrosis through the area, we've got thickened extracellular matrix. It takes a long time to get to that, but it is stuck. So the pain is not telling you where the muscle is the problem. The pain is actually telling you where the strain is. It's not an accurate representation of what it's going to take to fix this. Let's do another example though. So let's look at this person. We've got them in a relatively flexed position. They're kind of doing that kind of thing. And we probably see this person regularly. You know, you might be this person. They've got a general round. And the reality is they should be a little more, you know, ideally they'd be a little bit taller, and we've got some nice curves going on like that. But that's not the case in this situation. We've got someone who's forward. They've come forward with their body, and we call them generally flexed, or anterior center of gravity. And so when we do that, because many of the muscles of the back, they start all the way down here and they travel all the way up to here, not all of them, but certainly some of them, and generally they make that posterior longitudinal stretch. If I go all this way, this side is longer. I hope you'll agree with me, because we've separated the attachment points. We've put this lowest part further away from this highest part. Now, by comparison, the muscles on the front would be shorter. So we can actually go back. We could talk about the scalenes, those being to the ribs, and even the pec major muscles. We don't have an arm in this picture. And we could take the obliques, and we could even say rectus abdominis would be short in this case as well. So these are some muscles that would be short in the front, long on the back. So again, I'll ask, which set of muscles is going to be strained and likely in pain because of it? And maybe they bend forward. Every time they bend forward, it gets worse, you know. But which set of muscles is going to be in pain? And again, hopefully you say, you agree with me that it's the muscles on the back. They are long, L-O-N-G, and the ones on the front are short, S-H-O-R-T. Anyways, with that being the case, you don't necessarily want to work on the back side, on the posterior side, because these muscles over here. Now, one of the things that happens is the discs in between those spinal joints, the discs can desiccate, they can dry out, and they can shrink. So you get an overall shortening of the body. It tends to collapse. The whole thing tends to collapse forward and down, lengthening the back, shortening the front. So that's one thing. And as well, when you have shorter muscles, so when these guys really start to shorten, they want to stay there. We're all kind of designed, we're all kind of wired. It's as much a neurologic phenomenon as a tissue phenomenon, and it's often sympathetic controlled, both neurologic and mechanically controlled, that if you shorten a muscle for long enough, it will remain in that position. It will remain its resting state. So when you want to go and increase the height of the vertebrae, at night typically, that's when this thing happens, we have to decompress, and the tissue will resist that. So there's that annulus fibrosus on the outside, nucleus pulposus on the inside. We actually have to create a traction in between. But if we have tissue resisting that traction, if we have tissue that's very, very short here, and it's holding a compression on that disc, it means it can't generate the traction needed to create a vacuum to suck fluid back in, to pass through the cartilaginous end plate of the disc. So that's a big deal. Anyways, this person is stuck long on the back, short on the front, and if that's the case, if they're stuck short on the front, we cannot reduce that position. We cannot get rid of the fact that they're there. If we could get them to stand up a bit straighter, we could take away that lengthening and we could take away the strain that's happening. But the important thing is here, until we can get these muscles to release, until we can get them to lengthen a little bit more, you won't get the person to straighten up. So there's an order of operations. And in fact, one of the problems is if the patient tells you they have pain in the back and you go stripping away at those tissues, if you go pushing on them, you may destabilize them and they may fall even further forward. Not always, of course, and it's a very small amount. It's not, don't worry about it. But that's the thing, you're not effectively dealing with the problem when you do that. So the pain, though, is explanatory of tissue strain and a problem occurring. It does not tell you where the problem is coming from. Last example. This is a mess. This is also from our app, and it's a shameless plug because we're broke. If you could buy it, that would be really nice of you. Please buy it. Anyways, so here's the thing. We've got this set of muscles here. Now, this is just the longissimus muscle. In the app, we choose to represent muscles much of the time by simple arrows and little circles and stuff like that. And the thing is, these are summaries of how the muscles attach. You can see the bars kind of represent big groups here, major attachment points, and the arrows represent the insertions, which summarize nicely. But even still, with this summary, it is an incredibly complex structure. And so it gives the spine the ability to rotate, side bend, flex, and extend in very intricate ways. And so this means it can do some interesting stuff. So I'm going to take away that guy. There we go. That's a little better. Going to take away that guy and just simplify. So what often happens in the spine, to throw just that much more complexity into it, we can have a relatively straight shoulder girdle and lower girdle, pelvis girdle if you will, and we can have some twists and turns, quite excessive twists and turns in the spine, while still maintaining the appearance of a relatively neutral person. And you may be a little higher up on one side of that, a little bit higher up on one side versus the other, and you might see the shoulder, coming up a little higher on one side versus the other. But ultimately, this person looks relatively straight, whereas in between, the spine can be incredibly twisted and turned. This is a heavy exaggeration. Hopefully nobody looks like this. This is a surgical case if they do. But in any case, the muscles between these structures, between these vertebrae, can be very, very short. So again, I'm just going to summarize this real simple. So this is the side bending side. I'm reducing the complexity of it to some extent. This is the side bending side I've illustrated. So they tend to be a thicker muscle. Whereas if you look at the opposite side, and I'll just do those in purple, they would be, by comparison, the long side. So they would be stretched out and a little bit thinner. So as these guys basically stretch out, the long side here, and this gets crazy complex there, like that. There we go. The long side tends to be thinner, longer in the side of strain. Whereas the orange ones, again, are short and compressed. And whether they're actively contracting or they're fibrosed and stuck there, they've built up thickened tissue to reinforce themselves, it doesn't matter. The short side is the problem. The long side is where the pain is. So you'll never really get rid of that pain, that discomfort, and the loss of motion that comes with all that until you actually effectively deal with the real problem, the muscle and the vertebral position, and not just the muscle, of course. We're talking about the fascia surrounding the joint capsule and the ligament, whatever the short tissue is, whatever that happens to be. It doesn't matter until you deal with that. So hopefully that made sense. Again, we're Simple Lines Anatomy. We've got a bunch of social media apps and that we hang out on most of the time. We have nothing else to do currently. And we got that app for iPhone and Android. So, if you get a chance, that'd be cool.